that plan for the U.S. Supreme Court. I know you're unhappy with the decisions, but Alexander Hamilton, the complete independence of the courts is peculiarly essential in a limited Constitution. Now you want to rewrite the Constitution in response to a couple of decisions you don't like?
Well, Megyn, it's great to be with you. Thank you for having me. And last week's decisions were the latest in a long line and sadly were the nadir of the Supreme Court. It was a majority of the justices on Thursday rewriting Obamacare, disregarding the law, forcing that failed law on millions of Americans, hurting millions of Americans. And then on Friday, the marriage decision was utterly contrary to the Constitution. They're simply making it up. And as Justice Scalia powerfully said in dissent, that decision was an assault on our democracy. It was 5 unelected lawyers setting themselves up, and these are Scalia's words, as the rulers of all 320 million Americans.
But in response to a decision that you feel was politically motivated by the justices who are in the majority, you want to make the court more political?
It's pure politics, and you know, the framers, when they wrote the Constitution, they believed the check on judicial overreach. The framers wrote about judicial overreach quite a bit. They believed the check would be impeachment. Now, here's the sad reality. Within a few decades, Thomas Jefferson said impeachment had become not even a scarecrow. Even 200 years ago, the Supreme Court wasn't afraid of it. Today, we have a United States Senate. We can't even muster 50 votes to defeat Loretta Lynch, an attorney general who tells us she's not going to follow the law or the Constitution. There's no universe in which there are 67 votes to remove Anthony Kennedy from the Supreme Court.
How would an electorate that twice elected Barack Obama create a court that you like better than the one we have now?
Well, let's be clear. What I'm talking about are judicial retention elections, which means you'd have the same appointment, the same Senate confirmation. But every 8 years, the people would have an up or down vote with the option to remove a justice.
What if the people bounced out Scalia and Alito and Thomas, and we had a President Obama in the White House?
Well, I can tell you that 20 states have put in place judicial retention elections, and they have worked. The people have used them sparingly. But the alternative is, who in their right mind would design a system where every major public policy issue of the day is decided not by the people, not by the Constitution, not by elected representatives, but by 9 elite lawyers in Washington, D.C. As Justice Scalia observed in dissent, all 9 of them, they either graduated from Harvard or Yale. The 8 of the 9 are from the East Coast or the West Coast. Yes, I graduated from Harvard, too. As you know, my dad refers to my time up there as missionary work. I think the problem was that I didn't learn what they wanted me to learn there. I was a little too thick-headed to be indoctrinated when I was up there.
Well, you worked for a justice who was respected by many, the Chief Justice, William Rehnquist, when you clerked on the Supreme Court. And I want to ask you about this because one of the stories that I thought was so great out of your book was about Justice Thomas. When you clerked for the Supreme Court, you're a young guy, you go up there, you're clerking for the Chief Justice, but Justice Thomas agreed to see a little boy, a little African-American boy, who was paying a visit to the court, and tell the viewers what happened.
Well, sure. My co-clerk, who's a professor at Notre Dame now, he had lived the previous year in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he and his wife had tutored this young African-American boy named Carlos, who was a 7th grader. And Carlos had never left Arkansas. They decided to fly him to D.C. And they asked if any of the justices would meet with him. And 2 of them did. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it was very, very nice of her to meet with him. And then Justice Thomas sat down with this little boy, spent 2 hours talking with this junior high kid. And I got to tell you, what particularly impressed Carlos was Justice Thomas is a big Dallas Cowboys fan. He had a framed picture of himself with Troy Aikman. And the Supreme Court didn't matter much at all to Carlos, but the Dallas Cowboys, that was cool. At the end of 2 hours, Justice Thomas walked to his desk, and he had on his desk a Super Bowl ticket encased in lucite that was signed by Emmitt Smith. And he picked it up, he gave it to Carlos, and he said, "Carlos, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you this, but I want you to promise me you're going to get A's in school next year." And Carlos, with his eyes big and bright, nodded and said, "Absolutely, sir, I will."
Wow.
And, you know, Justice Thomas had moments like that over and over and over again. He's a man with an incredible heart.
That's amazing.
Heart for people. And in my new book, A Time for Truth, over and over again, I tell stories about the Supreme Court, what's going on behind closed doors, what's going on at the court.
Including
and
the time you
also
watched hardcore pornography with Sandra Day O'Connor, which, I mean, that's reason enough to buy the book, please. So, I mean, that happened. That happened. Senator, thank you so much for being here, and good luck with the book.
Well, thank you. And let me say, we are seeing incredible excitement.
Oh, I see that. Oh, wow. On cue.
In just a couple of months, over 100,000 people have come to tedcruz.org.
That's good.
Over 100,000 people have come to tedcruz.org. Tonight at midnight is the end of our fundraising quarter. We're at a packed fundraiser here in Houston.
All right.
And I would encourage your supporters, come to tedcruz.org. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good luck. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Wow. Like a whiplash from everything that just happened there. Well, when we come back, we will have that breaking news out of Baltimore, where police commanders are now admitting that they told officers not to engage as rioters burned and looted. Really? What happened to everything we heard over the past couple of months about them not doing that? We'll take a look at what this means for the city leaders who are already under fire. Plus, a professor at the publicly funded University of Memphis turned some heads when she came out and equated whiteness with terrorism. Tonight, see what the school is saying about the status of the thoughtful professor.